My name is Clint Hughes. My wife Lisa and I have 3 children at Logos School. In the last few years, we have witnessed incredible blessing from the Lord, not the least of which was the huge influx of new students who came in this year, both from new families from around the country and the children of alums. It's been a wondrous thing to behold. Now, the vision of Logos School hasn't changed very much in 31 years, so I assume the reasons why so many people chose Logos School this year are the same reasons families have been trusting the school for over 3 decades. So I've invited some of the faculty of Logos here today to rehearse what that vision is and to give us a sort of a jet tour of where God has been leading the school through the years. First, we have Tom Garfield. Tom has served as the head administrator at Logos for the entire 31 years. He also teaches U.S. history to the 10th graders, art electives, and heads up the drama department. Next, we have Nancy Wilson. Nancy is married to one of the founding board members, Douglas Wilson, and initially had a non-official cheerleading position during the conception and startup of the school, then started teaching junior high and high school English and literature classes until she switched professions to grandmother. She is now back at Logos, teaching 9th grade European literature and 10th grade American literature. Next, we have Matt Whitling. Matt has been at Logos 18 years and is the principal of the school. He is also a part-time Bible teacher, junior high boys PE teacher, and varsity boys basketball coach. Next, we have John Carnahan. John has been at the school for 15 years. He teaches senior rhetoric and 10th grade American literature and junior high math. He has managed Logos Press, and for the last 7 years has been the activities and program director. Last but not least, we have Becca Merkel. Becca went to Logos from K through 12. Her parents are Doug and Nancy Wilson, and her aunt was her kindergarten teacher. She came back as a Latin teacher for 2 years until she had her first baby. As a matter of fact, she gave her Latin finals on a Friday and had Knox on Monday. Is that correct?
Yeah.
After Knox started preschool, she returned to teach classical and British literature to the juniors and seniors, and currently has 5 children in Logos. Thank you all for coming. Now, I introduced Becca first, or Becca last, forgive me, but I left out an important credential, and that of being in the very first kindergarten class in 1981. And the beginning is usually a great place to start. So Nancy, can you tell us a little bit about the beginning, the vision, the events that led up to Tom coming aboard, etc.?
Well, we had a daughter. That was what got us started. Mm-hmm. And when she was just probably 2 or so, it dawned on us that we were not going to send her off to the public school, that we wanted a Christian education for her. So Doug got started right away. And he, in planning, he got a group of people together interested in starting a school. So he had a couple of years to work on it. One of those people he contacted was Tom Garfield, who was an old friend from high school and the Navy. And he was going to U of I in education, art.
Let's say art.
Art. And I do still remember the day that Doug said, "So Tom, how would you like to be the principal of a Christian school?" And you were a senior, I believe, at the time.
Yes.
At U of I. And his response was, he laughed.
Not
And
good.
I think that was sort of symbolic, because the tone at Logos all these years has been so jolly, so happy, through thick and thin, up and down. It's just maintained a very jolly atmosphere, and a lot of that is because of Tom's leadership in it. But so from the beginning, we wanted to provide something for our kids that we had not received, and that's where it started for us, and we really didn't know what we were doing.
So when Doug approached you, there was no school, there was just a vision, and after you left, what happened? Did you get together? Did you guys find a building? Did you?
Well, that's a pretty short time frame. After I left, we didn't go look for a building. I laughed because I feel like I need to qualify this. I laughed not because I thought Doug was insane or anything,
right.
which I sort of did actually, but that I was so unqualified. I was pursuing an art degree. I was doing student teaching in art at the Moscow High School. Never had my own classroom. Administration was something other people did. And so the idea was laughable to me. But that was in about October of '80. And I finished my schooling in December. and was going to be an art teacher, fully intending to do that and do normal things. And Julie and I prayed about it because I was just having no peace about turning this thing. And Doug said he'd be praying, which was totally unfair. And I can honestly say the Lord brought me to the board in January, and I said, basically, if you think this is a wise move, I trust your spiritual wisdom more than mine, and I'm willing to do whatever the Lord wants me to do. And so then they said yes anyway. And then, that spring and summer we looked around for buildings. We we had students, we had staff before we had a place, and we looked literally at just about everything, including homes, a big house, and I believe I'm right in saying this, even a barn. Pretty sure that's right. We actually seriously considered a barn. We had knocked on the doors of a number of churches, and nobody was really anxious to have a school there until we got to the Church of God, and they were a fairly small congregation with a large building that they had built and an unfinished basement. And so we worked out a deal where we would finish the basement, they would provide the funds, and we would pay them back. And that's how we got rolling.
Now, did you have the classical and Christian paradigm from the very beginning? I know Doug had read the article about Dorothy Sayers' article and such, and was that from the implemented right early on?
Close.
It was.
Yeah, Doug had read that in the Navy and kind of just filed it away, as he said, in the classification of Then he dug that out. I almost remember the day that he brought it to the board meeting, and I think we were at Larry Lucas's, of course, and he said he came across this, and so we read it, and we all were very excited about it, but I like to equate it with, we were used to a kind of a mac and cheese cuisine, and this was like a French cuisine, and it sounded really good, and we had no idea what it would take, but we really wanted to try it.
And nobody else was doing it. I mean, it's not like you can
No, there was no
didn't Google back then and find other schools and such.
No, we definitely couldn't Google back then, and we didn't. We wouldn't even have said that because it sounded really weird. It still sounds weird, but no. As far as we knew, nobody else was doing anything.
Yeah, and so were you the first student, Becca, or was there? How long did it take to get enough to be called a classroom? Did you get a dozen kids? Did you start with a few? Children and other families coming aboard, and
I don't know, Nancy, if Doug mentioned this to you, but we hired, including myself, 4 people, thinking we would have a 15-to-1 ratio of students. Okay, so we wanted to keep it to 15-to-1. We were very serious about all this, and so we thought, we'll cut it off at 60. See, 15-to-1 times 4, right? We'll cut it off at 60.
First year.
First year.
We were just a tad optimistic. Anyway, the Lord kindly, and I do mean this, kindly gave us about 16 kids. We added a couple more before the year was out and ended up with about 18. But so we had, you probably know this better than I do, but I think we had like 6 kindergartners in your class, and then 5 in a first grade, second grade combo, and then I'm not adding this up, but we had a 5th grader, a 6th grader, and a 9th grader. Worked out perfect.
yeah.
Well, a lot of families were very interested, but they wanted to see how it would go that first year or two, and then they weren't sure they wanted their children to be in an experiment.
Yeah.
So
And my parents were fine with that.
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I just don't pragmatically. I understand the paradigm, and you can understand if it's the classical approach where you have the logic and the rhetoric and the Latin and such. But where did you get that? I mean, did Doug scramble? Did he know Latin already? Did he know all of the?
No, he started going. He went back to U of I, and he had a master's in philosophy, so he just started picking up Latin classes, and he would take the Latin class and then go teach 3rd graders Latin. But he didn't have a lifelong goal of being a Latin teacher, as you can imagine. So he later, I don't remember when it was, he offered a class for adults. And taught Latin and started producing some material, at least finding materials. And then
Julie took his class.
Pardon me?
Julie took a class.
Julie took a class. I think the first class, Martha Sebring, then became Wilson. She was the first Latin teacher after Doug. And then Julie after that. And she's been doing it now for
21 years.
Yeah. So Doug kept taking these classes and ended up getting a degree in classical studies because he had so many credits. So he wanted to just stay one step ahead of the 3rd graders, and so that's.
Now, 18 years ago or so, when you came aboard, Matt, and 15 when you came aboard, was it a fully functioning, so you had the current facility that you have now, and it was a smooth running operation and kind of slid right in, or was it still?
It was a finely tuned,
was.
well-oiled machine.
Indeed, yeah.
I was going to
We
say
all
it depends on
When
That's
we
the story,
arrived.
and you're sticking to
depends
it.
on what you mean by function. You know?
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was already. And then did you?
Yeah, there was all sorts of momentum. And so we came in, John and I didn't have to, there was all sorts of work that we didn't participate in to get the thing going.
Yeah,
And we take all of that for granted now.
I read Doug's book, Recovering the Lost Tools of Learning. My wife and I were living in Boise at that time with our 2 kids, and reading through, I said, hey, that school's just 300 miles north of us. And circumstantially, the Lord brought us up here a year after I read the book, because we were swimming upstream down in Boise, homeschooling Christian schools that we didn't work for us. And this seemed the perfect thing, and it was.
That's not, but tell me your first impression. Come on. When you drove up to this school.
Oh, the story?
You can keep it short.
How much time do we have? So we're coming up to Moscow, and my wife and I book a motel room at that time, the Motel 6. So we pull in and to the Motel 6, and we start and get out of the car, and I looked across the street, and I went, oh, there it is, and it said Logos School right on the. And I said, honey, there it is, right there. It's,
Pretty exciting.
It's this
yeah,
really big
it was.
thing.
Well, when you're not, they say familiarity breeds contempt, but when you're not a part of that and you read this and you come up here and it's like Mecca. I mean, there it is,
I can relate to
and
that.
it's still almost like Mecca.
Practically.
You know?
Yeah. When we came up just to visit, we pulled up and it was probably 2 a.m, and we were all tired and such, and I wanted to go right to the school. I got to the school, got the kids out, and got them up there, and we're taking pictures. There it is, Logos School. You read the book, and I saw like the Trivium Sketches DVD that you guys had done some time ago, and by that time, when you pack up your family and you move up, you know what it's about, and it really isn't. I can totally relate to that. It's a very exciting thing.
After I said, there it is, and then I said, kind of looks like a roller skating rink.
Yeah, right.
Spotted.
And from our perspective, God kept bringing us these amazing people to be on the staff. And that's just been a huge blessing. And really was answers to prayer, because why should they come to Moscow to teach? And yet the Lord just kept providing remarkable people who were excited about the vision and loved the subject and loved the kids. And
Yeah, there's a real unique reciprocity that with Logos coming alongside the parents and helping with their mandate and privilege to bring kids up in the nurture and admonition. I mean, the parents understand what that is. Logos has been doing it for as long as they've been doing it, and the relationship is just really, it's incredible. How long after the school was up and running did other people start contacting you and wanting curriculum? And there's over how many official ACCS schools are there now?
Well,
worldwide, and
right.
started
I
with
think it's
Logos.
in the 250 range of schools. But no, it's very easy to mark when it took off. We had been operating for 10 years and had fairly recently moved to the roller rink and remodeled it. But Doug was asked, and you know about this more than I do, Nancy, but Doug was asked to write a book for the Turning Point series. Is that what it was called?
yes.
And on education. And so he wrote Recovering the Lost Tools, using the jump off from Sayre's original article, and what we had done to try to flesh that out and how that looked. But there was more to it than that in his book in terms of the background philosophy and why this kind of education. And it's a really weird analogy, but I like to say that it was sort of like, I felt like Doug was the husband bringing home all the bosses and friends from work without any warning for supper, and that put me in the wife role again. It's kind of weird, but I can't think of a better one. It really was. It opened the floodgates because it hit a readership already, but I believe around 15,000 or so. So it wasn't a standalone book. It was, people were expecting it, expecting the next book, and so it hit an established readership. And wow, it hit a nerve. And we got literally calls and letters and people, not so much saying we want to move to Moscow, but how can we do this where we are? I have to say, one of the things that was kind of hard to hear was hearing from so many people around the country that they were disenchanted, not so much with the public schools. I mean, you have to throw a rock and, but they were disenchanted with Christian schools as they were. And they had largely pulled out of them. And they over and over, the thing we heard was, this is what we've been looking for. This is what we've been looking for. So that's when it happened in 91. To such an extent that by 93, I was yelling for help. And Doug and some other guys helped organize the Association of Classical Christian Schools and got off the ground in 93.
Becca can remember that era of the flood of letters and phone calls we were getting
At home?
Yeah.
at home.
Is that about the time that you started doing the conferences and such? I mean,
Exactly. Yeah, 93 was the first conference. We had, I think, 70 people show up at the school.
I was in charge of photocopying for them.
You were? Oh, golly.
Yeah, and people would show up and just be like, "We would like all of your curriculum." And so I was
All of
like
everything.
pumping out, like turning pages of, I don't even know what it was, but I was handing people just reams of things that they wanted photocopied.
Yeah. So, yeah, it became, well, very much, holding on to the tail of the tiger. It was, we didn't even know what we'd done. And then it just grew from there. We had 3 conferences here in Moscow, and then people encouraged us to take it on the road. And we went from about 150 folks at the last conference in, I think, 95 at the Best Western. We went to Raleigh, North Carolina, and had 400 immediately. And so then it took off. But initially my secretary also was doing kind of running off copies and sending people this and that, and we slowly came to the realization that we could kind of make a little cottage industry of selling these things. So,
And that's when I came on.
Yeah.
That's when I came on board in January of '97. They said, John, they had the catalog was an couple of 8.5 by 11 stapled together with a few things, and we need somebody to run this. So I took what was there and had Evan Wilson, Doug's brother, help me make up a little catalog that actually folded, that was stapled in the middle, and
That was the
State of the art.
Staples in
and
the middle.
we developed Logic on video then, and Latin on video, and started growing.
Matt, again, like Nancy was saying, it's just God has brought these amazing people, and Matt is definitely one of the key ones, to try to embarrass him here. But he didn't even really know it at the time, but he came very equipped to fill a need we have, not only in leadership and teaching, but in writing curriculum materials. We fairly quickly found out that we were an odd duck in lots of ways. One of them was in curriculum. We were trying to do things that no one out there in the publishing world could accommodate. Okay, it wasn't like they were wrong and we were right. It was just we were different, and even the Christian publishers didn't have stuff that matched our teaching style. And so Matt fairly quickly came up with just some ways of doing things, and he wrote them down for his class, and fairly soon they were bestsellers through the marketing. Do you want to say anything about that?
No.
Okay. Tell them about state facts.
Yes, it is.
I was just trying to feed my family.
Oh, yeah.
The pain has always been excellent.
Yeah.
You're a liar.
I don't want to put you on the spot, Matt. What did you do before you came here? What was your profession before you came to Moscow? And
Well,
all
I was pretty fresh out of college when I came to Moscow. I'd spent a year student teaching, was hired out of student teaching to teach remedial math to 7th through 12th grade students who hated school, hated math, and hated me. And they just issued me an adult education credential. So without finishing my schooling, they gave that to me and had me start teaching, and that was terrible. And then I spent a year subbing K through 12 and wanted to become an elementary school teacher. My mom was an elementary school teacher, and I had 2 aunts that were, and I had an uncle who was a learning director, and we had a number of teachers in our family, and I thought God was calling me to be in the classroom somewhere, first grade through sixth grade, something like that.
So had you thought principal, or had you just thought teacher?
No, not at all. I wanted to teach, and I was going to job interviews, and my whole paradigm of what education should be like was changing as I was interviewing for positions. And we had our oldest son, Josiah, was 1 year old at that time, and I knew that I didn't want him in any of my classes. As he got older, I knew I didn't want him in any of the classes that I had subbed, or any of the remedial math classes for sure. And so we were knocking on doors that we didn't want to go through. And after about 5 or 7 interviews, I thought, this is for the birds. We need to look somewhere else. So I got a job in Apollo, Pennsylvania, teaching 3rd grade in a little one church Christian school there. And we were going to move back east in August. And so we put all of our belongings in my parents' garage and lived with my parents for a month and a half. And the job, inch by inch, kind of fell apart and fell through. And we had been receiving Credenda Agenda for about 4 or 5 years before that point. So I knew about Logos and Canon Press and thought I knew how it all worked. And this was back when Logos advertised teaching positions in Credenda. And we had seen the 3rd grade opening, I think a month or 2 months before, but I knew enough about Logos School to know that I wasn't qualified to teach there. And so I looked at it and thought, wouldn't that be great? But that's for somebody else who knows Latin, because I knew they taught Latin in 3rd grade and I didn't know anything about it. So when my job in Pennsylvania fell through, Tora, my wife, said, well, the worst thing they could do is turn you down. I said, that's true, and we're living with my parents, and I have no job, and the new school year's coming too.
Beggars can't be choosers.
Yeah. So I applied, and I remember writing, there are these essay sections. I remember writing in there, I don't know Latin, but if you give me a shot at it, I bet I could stay ahead of your 3rd graders. And I thought, they're just going to laugh. And a friend of mine, Paul Wilson, drove me up here, and we stayed with some friends for a couple days and interviewed. And this is when Doug and Nancy were building their house. I remember going out there, and it was framed, and you were getting ready to pour concrete or something. And yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Concrete pour.
That's a story in
Yeah, it was bad. I think something bad happened with the concrete.
I think it was because I was on the crew.
Yeah. So anyway, interviewed, got the job, and became a 3rd grade teacher at Logos School. And I came in, I drove around town with a video camera sticking out the minivan to show my wife what Moscow, Idaho would look like, right? Because it didn't look the way we had imagined.
2-minute video.
Yeah, not at all.
No, we did and went home, and then we moved out 2 days before school started, and lived with a family in the church. And the first day we looked around at different mobile homes, and the second day we bought one and moved in, and sat down in my classroom and looked at the curriculum guide to see what I was going to be teaching the following day. And I came in thinking, it's all about classroom control and discipline, and never turn your back on the kids, and make sure everybody stays in their seats. And after the first 15 minutes, all my little 3rd graders were just poised and ready to go,
pencil in hand.
Yeah, they just wanted to work hard. What do you want us to do? How far should we run? And then I realized that I didn't know anything. I didn't have anything to teach them. I was so used to the drill of maintaining control and keeping people busy and trying to keep them out of trouble that I'd never really taught any material. And that's when teaching became a lot of fun. In 3rd grade, I learned grammar, Shirley method grammar. I learned English grammar because I had to teach it to my 3rd graders, and I loved it. And teaching was a whole different prospect than what I had experienced before in California.
The reason I keep asking about principal is because you're like the consummate principal. It's amazing. I was just at a assembly earlier today, and I've been to where kids are in them, and it's amazing how much of a command you have, and it's not it's genuine respect. It's genuine respect, and it's almost like if you had a caricature of the consummate
the platonic.
Perfect. Yeah. Principle. It's your mannerisms and everything. I just very much appreciate that. You as a leader of the school, and there's a sense in which the children just have an incredible amount of respect for you, and it's amazing. So I'm just thrilled that.
Yeah, the dynamic that's unique at Logos is that the kids honor their parents because they've been taught to do that. They love and honor their parents, and that transfers to how they treat me. And so it really is. It's like falling into a chocolate pie working at Logos School, and I've loved it as a place to work. Great colleagues and a wonderful boss and super families and wonderful kids to teach. But as my own children have grown up, I'm seeing it more as a parent than I do just look at it as a profession, and that makes me more and more grateful because I see the benefit in my own children's lives from these teachers who are giving themselves away every day in the classroom. So this year we have a preschooler and a 12th grader, and everybody
and everything
Bookends, huh?
everywhere in between.
every grade in
That's
between.
right. That's right.
Yeah, and so we see the school a lot differently than we did 17 or 18 years ago when I just thought, this is really fun. Third graders are great. And that's all I cared about.
Yeah. Wow. Awesome. One quick question. We got to wrap this up. But over the last couple of years, especially this year, we've had a pretty serious influx of students. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but over a third of the children this year are new. Over 100 students, I believe. Is that, I haven't been here as long as you guys. Is that normative? Has there been, kind of an arc, a standard graph, or is this unprecedented?
In a word, no. We've never seen anything like this. The Lord blessed us with almost doubling every year for the first few years, but when you start with 18, that's not 36. But that was nice. It was a good trend. We could tell people we're doubling. But it moved on up, and I have to say with Becca's class, they were the consummate guinea pigs, and took it really well. She went through 13 years of us experimenting, and in all sorts of ways. So and now she's got her kids there, so obviously she didn't suffer too badly, I guess, or just didn't learn anything. But anyway, it grew. We had a height of about 290 at the turn of the century. Boy, that sounds a long time. And then for one reason or another, and some we know, some we don't know, it started going down the other way. And we went through some pretty rough times with the liberal element in Moscow coming after us pretty hard and heavy in the 2004, 5, 6 area. But Matt and I remember since about that time, at least 8 years or so, I don't know. Every summer we'd be praying for about 30 kids. 30 more kids. If we can only get 30 more kids, we'll make budget.
Yeah.
And so we're just...
And we'd get 22.
Yeah. The Lord would just bring just enough.
Specific number in mind, huh?
Just to keep us hungry, and that's fine, really it is. We didn't grow fat and kick, he's kept us, I think, humble, at least that way. And then this last year, we didn't do anything different. We didn't have a massive campaign of any sort. We didn't do any, TV ads or anything. But starting about January, about a year ago, Matt would keep coming in my office.
3 or 4 applications a week.
3 or 4 applications a week.
And so we had 8 students on them.
Yeah, these families that, 5 kids, 6 kids, 4 kids, and it just wouldn't stop.
So you knew there'd be more than 22 that year.
Yeah,
A lot of them are alum kids.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so there are people that you don't have to talk them into why Latin is a good idea, because they're kids that have already come all the way through, and now they're sending their kids in.
Yeah.
A bunch of that was alumni.
Yeah, a good third of that. And I can't tell you personally how gratifying that is.
Yeah.
It's a really strange sensation to be pushing a little kid that you're pretty sure you pushed 25 years ago on the swing.
Yeah.
But it's the same face and a different name, But it's wonderful. And
There's validation there, the full circle.
Yeah.
Comes down. So the bottom line is that we're pretty much filled to capacity at this point. You had to get a couple portable classrooms, and who knows what the Lord's going to do next year. So be a good time to tie in. We've got this 2012 benefit project going on now. There's other places on the website that you can find out specifically about how to pledge, and there's pianos and performances and pledging involved, and we're wanting to expand, right? So we are looking at using those funds, looking at land, looking at buildings, and looking at keeping up with the blessings of the Lord. And so it's a very exciting time, and I, for one, I speak for my wife, and I'm sure for all the other families that are just feel incredibly blessed to be here, because it's not, God is not blessing the building; He's blessing the people, the teachers, and you know, I moved up from Southern California, and it was one of the, you know, this side of heaven, it was one of the best decisions that we've ever made, and so I just love the school. I love you guys, and I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for coming. Thank you for talking about it. And we'll just pray that the Lord continues to bless as He's been blessing, and that we can keep up with those blessings as well.
Amen.
Well, thank you, Clint. You hit the ground running when you
Yeah,
came. So.
been excited. Been
Yeah.
excited. Thank you. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
Zoom
that-
in.
Zoom in on Clint right now. Right now.
That was maybe, was that not a good lead in?
No,
That
it was
we
great.
don't
That was
know?
perfect. That was
We
perfect.
don't know what we're
I'm
doing.
sorry. I
We
didn't
still
We're all
don't.
really nervous now.
I didn't say
If we
we
can
still
keep up with
don't
you.
know what we're
So
doing.
we're gonna have to add it. We're gonna have to add it. I apologize for that. I'm sorry.
Was that you, Carnahan?
That was
You
not
said
me.
that you wouldn't hear the buzz. I was going to turn the phone off.
Don't wave at the camera.
Hi, Mom.